The words hit me like a physical blow, slicing through the dead of night. It was 2 a.m., and I heard my daughter-in-law, Victoria, on the phone. "Tomorrow, we're taking her to the nursing home. Everything's already arranged." My blood ran cold, instantly freezing in my veins. I just grabbed my bag and slipped out the back door, disappearing into the darkness. The next day, they were desperately looking for me, frantic, but it was already too late for regrets. My name is Margaret, and I'm 70 years old. For the past 5 years, I've been living in the house of my son, Daniel, and his wife, Victoria. I truly believed it was my home. I thought they were my family. Oh, how incredibly wrong I was. It all started after I was widowed. Daniel showed up at my door, tears streaming down his face. He told me he couldn't bear to leave me alone, that he was my only family, that he needed me close. His words, so full of what I thought was genuine love, moved me to my core. So I sold my condo and moved in with them. At first, everything felt perfect. Daniel treated me with affection. Victoria would smile warmly when she saw me, and I felt useful, helping with the housework, cooking, caring for them. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, those smiles began to fade. The sweet words morphed into sharp remarks. The comforting hugs became empty gestures, and I, like a naive fool, kept telling myself it was just a rough patch, that things would get better. Victoria was the first to show her true colors. It started with seemingly innocent comments. "Margaret, don't you think you're eating a bit too much? Or maybe you should stay in your room when we have guests. The house looks tidier that way." Daniel never once contradicted her. In fact, it wasn't long before he started backing her up. "Mom, Victoria's right. It's better if you get more rest." Rest. That was their favorite word when they wanted me to disappear. The months crawled by, and the humiliations intensified. Victoria stopped cooking for me altogether. "If you want something special to eat, you can make it yourself," she'd tell me, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she'd perfected. Daniel would just pretend not to notice. I'd see it when he came home from work, finding my empty plate on the table while they finished their dinner. "Did you eat, Mom?" he'd ask, distracted, never really waiting for an answer. It felt like 1,000 tiny cuts, each one eroding a piece of my dignity. One night, while I was washing the dishes after they had gone to their room, I heard their voices through the wall. "You can't keep this up forever," Victoria was saying, her voice low but clear. "She's too much of a burden." My heart hammered against my ribs. "I know," Daniel replied, sounding tired. "But she's my mother." "Exactly," Victoria shot back. "She's your mother, not mine. And I didn't marry you to become a full-time nurse for the elderly." My hands trembled so violently, I almost dropped the plate. A nurse for the elderly. That's what she thought of me. Not a mother-in-law, not a grandmother to her future children, but a burden. An old woman needing a nurse. The following weeks were an absolute hell. Victoria began treating me as if I were invisible. She'd walk past me without even a glance. When I spoke to her, I'd get one-word answers or just outright silence. Daniel was no better. He'd come home, kiss Victoria, and greet me with a nod, as if I were a stranger in his own house. But what hurt the most was the way they talked about me when they thought I couldn't hear them. "She's getting slower," Victoria would say. Yesterday, it took her an hour to do something that would normally take 20 minutes. "Maybe we should look into some options," Daniel would reply, his voice hesitant. Options? That word haunted my sleepless nights. What kind of options? I didn't dare to ask, but deep down, something inside me already knew the terrifying answer. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to find out, was that I had my own secrets. Secrets I guarded like cards on my sleeve, waiting for the day I might need them. During my 60 years of marriage, my late husband and I had been incredibly careful with our money. We had properties, investments, savings accounts that had grown silently year after year. When I sold my condo to move in with Daniel, I didn't spend that money. I invested it, and it had grown a lot. Furthermore, there was something else they were completely unaware of, something that could change everything if I ever decided to reveal it. But that night, that damned August night, while I was pretending to sleep in my small room at the end of the hall, I heard footsteps in the kitchen. It was Victoria talking on the phone, in a low voice. I got up silently and walked to my bedroom door, pushing it slightly ajar. Her words reached my ears like daggers, each one a fresh wound. Yes, I've already spoken with the director. She can take her in tomorrow. Daniel agrees. We just need her to sign the papers. A pause. My heart was pounding so loudly I was terrified she might hear it. No, she doesn't know anything. Tomorrow, we'll tell her it's just a visit to see the place. Once she's there, it will be easier to convince her to stay. Another longer pause. Do I feel bad? Please. We've been putting up with her for 5 years. It's time for her to live her own life in the place where she belongs. My knees almost buckled beneath me. The nursing home. They were going to take me to a nursing home without consulting me, without giving me a choice, as if I were a piece of old furniture they wanted to get rid of. In that moment, I knew I had to act. I couldn't just stay there, waiting for morning to come and for them to drag me away like an animal to the slaughterhouse. Very slowly, I returned to my room and grabbed my purse. Inside were my most important documents, some cash, and my phone. It was all I needed for now. I waited until I heard Victoria go upstairs and close her bedroom door. Then, like a thief in my own house, I tiptoed to the back door. The night air was cool against my skin. For the first time in years, I took a deep breath and felt something akin to freedom. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was never going to be anyone's victim again. I walked through the dark streets for an hour before catching a cab. I gave the driver the address of the most elegant hotel in the city. If they were going to treat me like a homeless person, it was time to remind them who I really was. The receptionist looked at me strangely when I arrived at 3 in the morning with only a purse, but my credit card spoke for itself. The presidential suite for 2 nights to start, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. I sat on that king-size bed in that luxurious room, a room that cost more per night than Daniel earned in a week. And for the first time in years, I had truly smiled. At 6 o'clock in the morning, my phone started ringing. Daniel. I let it ring. He called again and again and again. Then the text started coming. Mom, where are you? We're worried. Please answer. Worried? What a convenient word. By 8 o'clock, Victoria had also started calling. Her voice on the voicemail sounded hysterical. Margaret, please come back. We don't know what happened. Daniel is desperate. Desperate? Probably because they realized their nursing home plan had been completely ruined. I ordered room service. Eggs Benedict, smoked salmon, fresh fruit, Colombian coffee. As I ate on the terrace of my suite, overlooking the city, I imagined Daniel and Victoria running around the house, searching for me in every corner, calling hospitals, maybe even the police. Let them worry. Let them feel even a fraction of the anguish I had felt for years. After breakfast, I made some important calls. The first was to my bank. I want to know exactly how much money I had available. The figure surprised even me. The investments had performed better than I had expected. The second call was more delicate. I dialed the number of Benjamin Carter, the best family law attorney in the city. I knew him because he had handled my husband's will years ago. Mrs. Margaret? His voice sounded surprised. How are you? I need to see you urgently, Benjamin. I have a complicated family situation. Of course. Can you come in this afternoon? I'll be there. The third call was the most important of all. I dialed a number I had saved for more than 5 years, ever since I moved in with Daniel. It was Lauren, my old friend and real estate agent. Margaret, what a surprise to hear from you. How are you, dear? Lauren, I need you to do a very special favor for me. Do you remember that property downtown you saw years ago? The one you said would be perfect for me if I ever decided to be independent again. By the way, if you're still with me, make sure to hit subscribe. More unbelievable stories are coming. While we talked, my phone kept vibrating with missed calls. Daniel had called 14 times. Victoria 8. They had even managed to find my late husband's number, which I still kept as an emergency contact, and had called there. How desperate they must have been to not be able to control someone when you're used to manipulating them. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I went down to the hotel lobby dressed in my best pearl gray suit and my most elegant leather shoes. I had made an appointment at the hotel's beauty salon. Manicure, pedicure, cut, and style. If I was going to start a war, I would do it. Looking impeccable. The stylist, a young woman named Katie, looked at me curiously. Special occasion, ma'am. You could say that, I replied. It's the first day of the rest of my life. While Katie worked on my hair, I reflected on the last 5 years. How had I allowed them to treat me like that? When had I stopped valuing myself? The answer was painful but clear. From the moment, I thought being a burden was better than being alone. But I wasn't alone anymore. I had money. I had resources. And most importantly, I had the truth on my side. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I arrived at Benjamin's office. It was on the 25th floor of a skyscraper in the financial district. The windows overlooked the entire city, and from there, I could see the neighborhood where Daniel lived. "Margaret, you look splendid," Benjamin said as he poured me a coffee. "But something tells me this isn't a social visit." I told him everything. The conversation I had overheard, the nursing home plan, my nighttime escape. Benjamin took notes while I spoke, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "This is very serious, Margaret. What they plan to do could constitute elder abuse, especially if they intended to do it without your consent. What are my options? Many. But first, I need you to tell me something. Do they know about your real financial situation?" "No, they have no idea. Daniel thinks I'm a poor widow living off his charity." Benjamin smiled for the first time in the meeting. "Then we have a considerable advantage." He explained the legal options: restraining orders, lawsuits for emotional abuse, even criminal charges if we could prove they had planned to commit me against my will. "But I have a different proposal," he continued, his eyes sparkling with a glint that I immediately liked. "What if we teach them a lesson they will never forget?" "I'm all ears, Benjamin." "We're going to show them exactly what the woman they thought they could discard is worth. But we will do it in a way that the blow is public, definitive, and completely legal." I left that office with a plan that would take a few weeks to execute, but would be worth every single minute of the wait. Back at the hotel, I finally decided to answer one of Daniel's calls. "Mom, thank God. Where are you? We've been looking for you everywhere. Victoria is crying. We thought something terrible had happened to you." His voice sounded genuinely concerned. He almost convinced me. "Almost. I'm fine, Daniel. I just needed to go for a walk and clear my head." "A walk? It's been more than 12 hours. Where are you exactly?" "In a safe place. Don't worry about me." "Mom, please come home. We can talk about whatever is bothering you." "Talk? As if it were that simple." "You know what, Daniel? You're right. We do need to talk. But not on the phone. In person, and when I'm ready." "When will that be?" "Soon. Very soon." I hung up before he could reply. That night, as I had lobster for dinner in my suite, overlooking the city lights, I toasted to myself. To the woman I had been, to the woman I was reclaiming, and to the woman I was becoming. Daniel and Victoria had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the wrong woman. The following days were a mix of strategic preparation and personal rediscovery. Every morning, I would wake up in that luxury suite, order my breakfast to the room, and work on my battle plan. Daniel and Victoria kept calling, desperately. Their messages had evolved from concern to pleading, and then to something that sounded dangerously close to veiled threats. "Mom, this isn't funny anymore," Daniel said in his last message. "Victoria is sick with nerves. You need to come back right now, or we will have to take more drastic measures." More drastic measures. Like taking me to the nursing home by force. How predictable they were. But there was something they didn't know. Something I had discovered during my conversations with Benjamin. It turns out that the house where they had lived all these years, the house Daniel considered his, actually had a more complicated history. When my husband died, he left that property in a trust under my name. Daniel could live there as long as I was alive and consented. But technically, legally, the house was mine. He never bothered to read the full will documents. Why would he? After all, I was just his poor widowed mother who depended on his generosity. On the 4th day of my disappearance, I decided it was time to begin the next phase. Lauren had found the perfect apartment. A penthouse in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, fully furnished with 24-hour concierge service. "Margaret, this place is a dream," she told me as we toured the apartment. 2 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a terrace with a hot tub, and the most spectacular view in the entire city. "When can I move in?" "Whenever you want. The owner is desperate to rent it to someone reliable." I signed a lease that same afternoon. 2 years, paid in advance in cash. After leaving the real estate office, I took a taxi to the most elegant shopping mall in the city. It was time to renew my wardrobe. For years, I had dressed like the poor widow they thought I was. Worn-out clothes, dull colors, comfortable but unstylish shoes. Today, that ended. At the most exclusive boutique, a saleswoman named Katie attended to me with that mix of professional courtesy and slight disdain reserved for customers who didn't look like they could afford the merchandise. "How can I help you, ma'am?" "I need a completely new wardrobe," I stated. "Business suits, cocktail dresses, shoes, accessories, everything." Her expression changed slightly when I pulled out my black card. 2 hours later, I walked out of there with 8 bags full of clothes that cost more than Daniel earned in 3 months. Dresses in shades of emerald, cherry red, gold, deep violet. I would never wear sad colors again. That night, as I was unpacking my new acquisitions, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, Mrs. Margaret. This is Inspector Marcus Riley from the city police. Your son, Daniel, filed a missing person report. Could you confirm that you are okay?" Interesting. They had escalated the drama to involve the police. "Inspector, I am perfectly fine. I am in full command of my mental faculties, and I decided to take a vacation. There is no disappearance to investigate. Could you tell me where you are exactly? Your son is very worried. I am in the city, in a safe place. Inspector, I want it on the record that I left that house of my own free will, that I do not wish to be contacted until I am ready." "Understood, ma'am. Is there anything else you need?" "Yes. If my son or his wife file any more false reports about me, I want them to know that I might consider it harassment." The silence on the other end of the line was eloquent. The next day, I moved into the penthouse. The movers arrived at the hotel at 8 o'clock in the morning to transport my few belongings. It was strange how little I needed when it was really about starting over. My new home was everything Lauren had promised and more. From the terrace, I could see the entire city spread out at my feet. I poured myself a glass of red wine and toasted to my new independence. But the real satisfaction came that afternoon when I finally decided to answer one of Daniel's calls. "Mom, thank God. The police told us you're okay, but we need to see you." "Where are you exactly?" "I'm in my new home, Daniel." "Your new home? What are you talking about?" "I moved. I got my own apartment." A long silence. "With what money?" "Mom, you don't have the resources to live alone. You need to come home before you do something you'll regret." "My home." Interesting that you use that word. "What do you mean?" "Nothing, son. Just that it's funny how sometimes words reveal more than we intend." "Mom, you're talking strangely." Victoria says, "Maybe you need medical help. We could take you to a doctor for a checkup." There it was. The real Victoria surfacing. Victoria says that. How thoughtful of her to be concerned about my mental health. She just wants what's best for you. We all want what's best for you. Like taking me to a nursing home. The silence that followed was deafening. "What are you talking about?" "I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, Daniel." "Mom, we never what? Never planned to commit me without my consent? Never discussed how convenient it would be to get rid of the burden I represent. I don't know where you heard that, but I heard it from your wife's lips, Daniel." At 2 o'clock in the morning, on the phone, arranging my fate as if I were a piece of old furniture to be discarded. Another long, tense silence. "Mom, if you overheard something, it was out of context." "Out of context? We're taking her to the nursing home tomorrow. It's all arranged. What context could possibly make those words mean something different?" We were just exploring options. Without consulting me, you thought it would be for the best. You thought it would be more convenient for you. It's not like that. Then explain it to me, Daniel. Explain how planning to commit your mother without her knowledge is an act of love. He couldn't, because there was no explanation that could justify the unjustifiable. "I want to see you," he finally said. "We need to talk in person." "I agree, but it will be when I decide, where I decide, and on my terms." "When?" "Soon, son. Very soon. And when we do see each other, you're going to discover a few things about your poor widowed mother that are going to surprise you very much." I hung up before he could respond. That night, as I had dinner on my terrace under the stars, I called Benjamin. "How is our project coming along?" Better than expected, Margaret. I have some very interesting information about Daniel and Victoria's finances. Apparently, they've been living beyond their means for years. How far beyond? Credit card debt, personal loans, a late mortgage. They've been using your presence in the house to justify expenses they can't afford. Interesting. There's more. Apparently, Victoria has been telling her friends that you have senile dementia and that's why you need special care. She's been building a narrative to justify the nursing home. My blood boiled. Do you have proof of that? I'm gathering it, Margaret. When we're done with this, they're going to regret ever messing with you. I hung up with a smile on my lips. Daniel and Victoria had no idea what was coming for them. A week after moving into the penthouse, I had established my new routine. Breakfast on the terrace, a workout in the building's gym, afternoons working with Benjamin on our master plan. For the first time in years, I felt alive, powerful, in control of my destiny. Daniel had stopped calling after our last conversation. Victoria, on the other hand, had intensified her attempts. Her voicemails revealed a growing desperation. Margaret, please come back. Daniel is a mess. He's barely eating, barely sleeping. This is destroying us as a family. As a family. What irony. Margaret, I know you're angry, but running away doesn't solve anything. We're adults. We can talk like civilized people. Civilized people. Like when they were planning to commit me without my consent. But the message that caught my attention the most arrived on a Thursday night. Margaret, I need to be honest with you. Daniel is considering reporting you as mentally incompetent. He says your behavior proves you can't make rational decisions. Please come back before this gets out of control. There was the real Victoria, the veiled threat wrapped in false concern. I forwarded the message to Benjamin immediately. Perfect, he said when I called him. This is exactly what we needed. They're digging their own grave. How so? If Daniel tries to have you declared mentally incompetent, we would have grounds for a lawsuit for defamation and elder abuse. But more importantly, it will be the perfect time to reveal your true financial situation. Do you have everything ready for phase 2? Everything is prepared. Are you sure you want to do this in public? Absolutely. I want it to be as humiliating for them as it was for me to hear their plans that night. The plan was simple, yet devastating. Lauren had organized a luxury property exhibition at the most exclusive hotel in the city. Daniel and Victoria had been specifically invited with the excuse that there was an investment opportunity that might interest them. What they didn't know was that I would be the event's keynote speaker. The day arrived faster than expected. I dressed in my new emerald-colored suit, high heels, and jewelry I had bought especially for the occasion. In the mirror, I saw a woman I didn't recognize. Elegant, powerful, intimidating. I arrived at the hotel an hour before the guests. The ballroom was perfectly prepared. Tables with property information, canapes, champagne, and a giant screen where the presentations would be projected. Lauren was checking the final details when Benjamin arrived with a portfolio full of documents. Ready for the show? He asked me. More than ready. At 7 o'clock, the guests began to arrive. Business people, investors, wealthy individuals who were genuinely interested in the properties. And then at 7:30, I saw them walk in. Daniel was wearing his only good suit, the one he wore for weddings and funerals. Victoria had tried to look elegant in a red dress she had probably bought on sale. They looked completely out of place among the city's financial elite. I watched them from the other side of the ballroom as they looked for whoever had invited them. Their faces showed a mix of nervousness and excitement. They probably thought someone had recognized their investment potential. Lauren went up to the small stage to give the welcome speech. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our exclusive exhibition of premium properties. Tonight, we have the honor of presenting a carefully chosen selection of the best real estate investments in the city. Daniel and Victoria were smiling nervously, trying to blend in with the other guests. But before we begin with the properties, Lauren continued, I want to introduce you to an extraordinary woman, a visionary investor who has recently decided to significantly expand her real estate portfolio. Please, let's welcome Mrs. Margaret Vance. The audience's applause accompanied me as I walked onto the stage. From my elevated position, I could perfectly see Daniel and Victoria's faces. First, confusion. What was their poor widowed mother doing at a luxury investment event? Then recognition. It was really me, but transformed, elegant, speaking with confidence in front of an elite audience. Finally, horror, as they began to understand the implications of what they were seeing. Good evening. I began, my voice clear and firm. Over the last 5 years, I have learned a lot about the true value of things. Above all, I have learned that sometimes the people closest to us can be the ones who know us the least. I looked directly at where Daniel and Victoria were standing. Their faces had lost all color. I have decided to share my story with you because I believe it perfectly illustrates why it is so important to maintain our financial independence, regardless of our age. The audience listened attentively. Some had already noticed where I was directing my gaze. 5 years ago, I decided to move in with my son and his wife. I sold my property and thought it would be wonderful to live as a family. What I did not expect was to discover that my presence had become a burden to them. A murmur went through the ballroom. This was not the typical investment presentation they were expecting. 2 weeks ago, I happened to overhear a phone conversation. My daughter-in-law was arranging for me to be committed to a nursing home without my knowledge or consent. We're taking her to the nursing home tomorrow. It's all arranged. Those were her exact words. The murmur intensified. Some guests began to look around, trying to identify the protagonists of the story. Daniel tried to move toward the exit, but Victoria stopped him. She probably thought that running away would confirm their guilt. That night, I made a decision. Instead of becoming a victim of their plan, I decided to remind them of something they had completely forgotten. I paused dramatically. That the woman they planned to discard as a nuisance had her own resources. Considerable resources. Benjamin appeared beside the stage with a portfolio of documents. Tonight, I have purchased 3 properties from this exhibition. I continued. A penthouse in the financial district, a country house in the mountains, and a commercial building downtown. Total investment, $2 million in cash. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Daniel looked as if he was about to faint. Victoria's mouth was wide open. I want this to serve as a lesson for everyone present, I continued. Never underestimate older people. And never, ever assume you know someone's true situation. I came down from a stage to thunderous applause. The audience was fascinated by the drama they had just witnessed. I walked directly toward Daniel and Victoria. Other guests had already realized who they were and were looking at them with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "Hello, son," I said in a calm voice. "Surprised to see me?" Daniel looked at me as if he had seen a ghost. His face had gone from white to red, and then to a sickly green. Victoria, on the other hand, looked like a marble statue, completely paralyzed. "Mom," Daniel whispered. What is all this?" "This, my son, is reality. The reality that you two never bothered to get to know." The other guests began to gather discreetly, pretending to look at property brochures while listening to our conversation. The drama was too juicy to ignore. "Mrs. Margaret," Lauren intervened with a malicious smile. "Are these the relatives you told me about? The ones who thought you needed special care?" Victoria finally found her voice. "Margaret, I don't understand anything. Since when do you have so much money?" "Since always, my dear Victoria. It's just that you assumed I was a poor, helpless widow. You never asked. You were never interested in really knowing my situation." Daniel tried to approach. "Mom, if you had resources, why didn't you tell us? We could have what, Daniel? Treated me with respect? Consulted me before planning my life? Or you simply would have found more creative ways to take advantage?" An older man who had been listening came over. "Excuse me, ma'am, but is it true that they planned to commit you without your consent?" "Completely true," I replied without taking my eyes off Daniel. "My daughter-in-law arranged everything over the phone." "It's all arranged," were her words. The man shook his head in disgust. "That's elder abuse. They should be in jail." Victoria turned as red as a tomato. "That's not true. We only wanted what was best for her. We thought she needed more care." "Care?" My voice rose slightly. "Like ignoring me during dinners? Like making me feel invisible in my own house? Like arguing about how annoying my presence was?" More people had gathered around us. Some were discreetly recording with their phones. "Margaret, Please, Daniel pleaded. People are staring at us. We can discuss this in private. In private? Like when you discuss my future in private, without including me? Benjamin appeared at my side with a folder. Mrs. Margaret, would you like me to show them the documents now? What documents? Victoria asked nervously. The documents that prove that the house you've been living in for these 5 years is legally mine, I replied calmly. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel looked as if he had been slapped. What are you saying? I'm saying that when your father died, he left that property in a trust under my name. You can live there as long as I'm alive and I consent. But technically, legally, the house is mine. Victoria staggered. That can't be true. Benjamin opened the folder and showed the documents. These are the trust papers, duly registered and notarized. Mrs. Margaret is the legal owner of the property. Daniel took the documents with trembling hands. But I thought, Dad told me the house would be mine. Your father told you that you could live there and take care of me. That's not the same as being the owner. An elegant woman who had been listening came closer. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Julia Vance from the city's financial newspaper. Would you be willing to give an interview about your story? Of course, I replied. I think it's important for people to know what can happen to senior citizens when family makes the wrong assumptions. Daniel grabbed my arm. Mom, please don't make this public. We can sort this out among ourselves. I gently freed myself from his grip. Like when you sorted out my future among yourselves, without consulting me, without including me, treating me like an object to be disposed of. It wasn't like that. Victoria shouted, completely losing her composure. We took care of you for 5 years. We gave you a roof over your head, food, everything you needed. You gave me, my voice turned icy. You gave me a roof over my head in my own house. The murmur of indignation from those present was audible. Several were clearly on the side of the elegant older woman who had been betrayed by her own family. Mrs. Margaret, the journalist said, "What are your plans now?" "Very simple," I replied with a smile. "I'm going to live my life on my own terms in my own home with my own money. And I'm going to make sure my story serves as a warning to other seniors who may be in similar situations." Daniel looked completely defeated. "And what about us? Where are we going to live?" "That," I said as I walked towards the exit, "is an excellent question, one you should have asked yourselves before you planned on sending me to a nursing home." The following days were a whirlwind of media activity. The story of the betrayed millionaire grandmother had gone viral on social media. The videos from the event had been shared thousands of times, and my phone wouldn't stop ringing with interview requests. But the most satisfying part was watching Daniel and Victoria try to manage their public image. Victoria had created an Instagram account where she tried to tell her side of the story. "People don't understand," she said in her tearful videos. "We love Margaret like family. We only wanted what was best for her. Modern nursing homes are beautiful places where seniors can socialize and receive professional care." Her followers didn't believe a word of it. The comments were ruthless. "Without consulting her? At 2 in the morning? That's not love, it's abuse. And why didn't you know she had money? Weren't you interested in actually getting to know the woman you lived with? My grandmother always says, the family that betrays you once will betray you always." Daniel had opted for a different strategy. He had started calling me directly, leaving increasingly desperate messages. "Mom, this is getting out of control. Victoria is getting threats online. People recognize us on the street and insult us. Please say something publicly to calm things down." Calm things down. After 5 years of humiliation, they wanted me to defend them publicly. The message that struck me the most arrived a week after the event. "Mom, we lost our jobs." Victoria was fired because the story reached her office. I was asked to resign because my family situation was affecting the company's image. "We don't have money to pay rent. If we have to move, please help us." Help them. Funny how their tone changed when they needed something. That afternoon, I had the most important interview scheduled so far. The most watched morning television show in the country. Julia had arranged for it to be live from my penthouse to showcase my new life. I prepared carefully. A violet dress, elegant jewelry, perfect makeup. When the camera crew arrived, my apartment looked like something out of a decorating magazine. "We're live in 3, 2, 1. Good morning. I'm Julia Vance, and I'm here with Margaret Vance, the woman whose story has moved the entire country. Margaret, tell us, how do you feel after everything that has happened? Julia, I feel free. For the first time in 5 years. Free to live without apologizing for existing. Free to make my own decisions. Free to be treated with the respect I deserve. Your daughter-in-law, Victoria, has been giving interviews saying that you only wanted to protect her, that the nursing home was for your well-being. Julia, when someone plans your future without consulting you, secretly, in the middle of the night, that's not protection, that's control. And when they have also been treating you like a burden for years, it's hard to believe their motives were truly altruistic. What would you say to other seniors who might be going through similar situations? I would tell them that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity, that you shouldn't let anyone make you feel like a burden, and above all, to maintain control over your own lives and finances. Now, we understand that your son, Daniel, has been trying to contact you. Yes, he has been calling, especially since they lost their jobs. And what do you plan to do about it? Look, Julia, I'm not a vengeful person, but I'm not a foolish person either. For 5 years, Daniel and Victoria treated me as if I were invisible when they thought I depended on them. Now that they've discovered I have my own resources, suddenly I'm important again. Are you willing to reconcile with them? A real reconciliation requires a genuine acknowledgement of the harm caused. It requires sincere apologies, and it requires real changes in behavior. So far, all I've received are excuses and justifications. Victoria says the consequences have been disproportionate, that losing their jobs is too much of a punishment. Disproportionate? My voice hardened slightly. You know what's disproportionate? Planning to commit someone without their consent. That is disproportionate. What are your plans for the future? I'm considering creating a foundation to help seniors facing family abuse. I want my experience to serve to protect others. One last question, Margaret. Do you regret anything? I thought carefully before answering. I regret allowing them to treat me badly for so long. I regret wasting 5 years feeling like a burden when in reality, I was an independent and capable woman. But I do not regret taking back control of my life. When the interview ended, my phone exploded with messages. Hundreds of people sharing their own stories, thanking me for speaking out, offering support. But the message that caught my attention the most came from an unknown number. Mrs. Margaret, this is Stephen Clark, an investigative journalist. I have information about your son's finances that I think you would be interested in knowing. Could we talk? I smiled as I dialed the number. Daniel and Victoria hadn't seen anything yet. The meeting with Stephen was revealing in ways I hadn't expected. He arrived at my penthouse with a folder full of documents and a serious expression that immediately put me on alert. Mrs. Margaret, after your television interview, I decided to investigate your family situation more deeply. What I found is disturbing. He sat across from me in the living room and opened the folder on the glass table. For the last 5 years, Daniel and Victoria have been using your presence in the house to obtain credits and loans they couldn't have gotten otherwise. What do you mean exactly? They submitted documents declaring you as a financially dependent person with mental health issues. This allowed them to access government assistance programs, tax deductions for elder care, and preferential loans. My blood began to run cold again. They financially benefited from pretending I had mental problems. Exactly. Here are the tax returns for the last 3 years. They received deductions for medical expenses that never existed, subsidies for elder care they never really provided, and several loans they justified by saying they needed the money for your care expenses. I reviewed the documents in disbelief. There were fake medical bills, receipts for medications I had never taken, even reports from a psychiatrist who was supposedly treating me for senile dementia. How did you get all this? I have contacts in various institutions. When a story like yours becomes public, sometimes people who were previously silent decide to speak up. Stephen pulled out more papers. But there's something more serious. Victoria has been running a blog for 2 years where she documents her heroic struggle caring for her mother-in-law with dementia. He showed me printouts of the blog. The title was Living with Margaret, a devoted daughter-in-law's diary. I read some entries with growing horror. Today, Margaret had another episode. She couldn't remember where she put her medicine and blamed me for hiding it. It's so hard to stay patient when the illness makes her so aggressive. Daniel is exhausted. Working all day and then coming home to deal with his mother's mood swings is wearing him down. But we carry on out of love. The doctors say Margaret's condition is only going to get worse. We're considering professional care options. It's heartbreaking, but perhaps it's for the best for everyone. Is all of this made up? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Completely fabricated. But here's the interesting part. The blog has generated income. It has sponsors, affiliate links, even a donation account to help with Margaret's medical expenses. How much money have they made from this? Approximately $15,000 over the last 2 years. I was speechless. They hadn't just planned to get rid of me. They had been profiting from lies about my mental health for years. There's more, Stephen continued. Victoria also created a profile on a crowdfunding platform 6 months ago. They were raising money to renovate the house and make it safer for a person with dementia. How much did they raise? $8,000 so far. It was too much. I got up from my seat and walked to the window. The city view that usually calmed me now felt blurred by rage. What can I do legally with this information? A lot. Fraud, swindling, misappropriation, defamation. We could build a solid case that could result in criminal charges. My phone rang at that moment. It was Daniel, probably calling for the 15th time that week. This time, I decided to answer. Yes, Mom. Thank God you answered. We need to talk urgently. I'm busy, Daniel. Mom, please. Victoria is having panic attacks. The harassers online are posting our address. Last night, someone threw eggs at the house. What a shame. Mom, we are your family. You can't be okay with this happening to us. My family? The family that diagnosed me with senile dementia without my knowledge to obtain financial benefits. A long silence. What are you talking about? I'm talking about Victoria's blog. I'm talking about the false tax returns. I'm talking about the loans you got by lying about my mental condition. Mom, I don't know anything about that. You don't know anything about the blog Living with Margaret, where your wife documents my supposed dementia episodes? You don't know anything about the donations you've been receiving for my medical care? You don't know anything about the fake medical bills you submitted to get tax deductions? This time, the silence was deafening. Daniel, I have investigative journalists sitting right here with documents that prove everything I've just said. Do you want to keep lying? Mom, if there was anything irregular, it was Victoria's idea. I didn't know the details. You didn't know the details of stealing money, using my name. You didn't know the details of inventing a mental illness I don't have. Victoria said it was legal. She said that since you lived with us, we were entitled to those benefits. And the blog? Was it also legal to lie publicly about my mental health to make money? Mom, I didn't read the blog. Victoria handled those things. Daniel, do you know what the difference is between you and me? What? When I make a mistake, I own it and take responsibility. You, on the other hand, always find someone else to blame. Mom, please, can we fix this? No, Daniel, we can't. This gets fixed with justice. I hung up and looked at Stephen. When can we file the lawsuits? The lawsuits were filed on a Tuesday morning. Benjamin had worked all night to prepare the documents. Tax fraud, swindling, defamation, identity theft, and elder abuse. It was a legal arsenal that would leave Daniel and Victoria with no escape. But before the documents reached their hands, I had one last card to play. Are you sure you want to do this publicly? Stephen asked me as he set up the recording equipment in my living room. Completely sure. The people who donated money believing Victoria's lies deserve to know the truth. We had decided to do a live broadcast on social media. In just 2 hours, more than 50,000 people had registered to watch. The story had captured the nation's attention. We're live in 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon. I am Margaret Vance, and today I'm going to share information with you that will completely change what you thought about my family situation. I looked directly at the camera. Over the last few days, an investigative journalist has discovered that my son and daughter-in-law have been lying about my mental health for years to obtain financial benefits. I held up a copy of Victoria's blog. My daughter-in-law, Victoria, created a blog called Living with Margaret, where she invented a completely false version of my life. According to her writings, I suffer from senile dementia, have aggressive episodes, and require constant medical care. None of this is true. As you can see in this broadcast, I am in perfect mental condition. I manage my own finances. I live independently. And I make all my own decisions without help. I read one of the blog entries. Today, Margaret had another episode. She couldn't remember where she put her medicine and blamed me for hiding it. I paused, then added, "This entry is dated on a day I was in New York closing a real estate investment." The live comments multiplied by the second. People were outraged. But the lie goes beyond the blog. Using these false stories, they obtained tax deductions for non-existent medical expenses, government subsidies for elder care they never provided, and donations from well-intentioned people who believed their narrative. I showed the tax documents. In total, they have obtained approximately $25,000 by lying about my mental condition. My phone started ringing insistently. It was Daniel, probably watching the broadcast in a panic. "I see my son is trying to call me right now," I said, showing the phone to the camera, probably to ask me to stop this broadcast. I decided to answer and put it on speaker. "Mom, please stop that broadcast. You're destroying our lives." "Hello, Daniel. I'm live with 50,000 people. Is there anything you want to say publicly about Victoria's blog and the money you obtained by lying about my health?" "Mom, I didn't know you were live. Hang up right now." "Why should I hang up? Are you afraid of people hearing your side of the story?" "This is all Victoria's fault. I didn't know anything about the blog. She handled those things." The comments exploded. People couldn't believe he was blaming his wife live on air. "Daniel, so you admit that Victoria lied about my mental condition?" I don't know what to admit. Just stop the broadcast. "Do you admit that you received money under false pretenses?" "Mom, please." "It's a simple question, Daniel. Yes or no?" A long silence. Then we heard Victoria's voice shouting in the background. "Hang up. Don't say anything else." "Is that Victoria?" I asked. "Does she want to join the conversation?" I'm sure the 50,000 people watching us would have some interesting questions for her. "No," Victoria screamed. "Daniel, hang up now." "Victoria," I said, raising my voice, "could you explain to the audience why you invented stories about my dementia? Could you explain how you justify the money you earned with those lies? You have no right to ruin our lives like this." Victoria shouted, grabbing the phone. "I have no right after you ruined mine for 5 years. We took care of you. We gave you a home." "Victoria, I'm reading your blog live. It says here I had a violent episode on March 15th. Could you explain what happened that day?" That was because it turns out on that day I was in Miami visiting my investment broker. I have receipts, photos, witnesses. Those details don't matter. They don't matter? Lying about someone's mental health doesn't matter? You abandoned us. You disappeared in the night like a thief. "Victoria, I left because I overheard your phone conversation, planning to commit me to a nursing home without my consent. It was for the best for me, or the most convenient for you." The call was abruptly cut off. The comments went wild. People were virtually applauding, sharing the broadcast, expressing their support. As you can see, I continued calmly. It's hard to maintain lies when you're confronted with real evidence. This broadcast isn't just about my personal story. It's about something much bigger. The systematic abuse of senior citizens by family members who take advantage of their perceived vulnerability. Tomorrow, my lawyers will file formal lawsuits against Daniel and Victoria for fraud, swindling, and defamation. All the money they obtained fraudulently will be returned to the corresponding institutions and to the people who donated believing their lies. But more important than legal justice is moral justice. I want my story to serve as a warning. Never let anyone take away your dignity, no matter how old you are or how vulnerable you may seem. Thank you for joining me today. I will keep you informed about the progress of the legal case. I ended the broadcast with over 80,000 viewers. My phone immediately exploded with messages of support, interview offers, and contacts from other seniors sharing their own stories. But the message that satisfied me the most came an hour later. It was from the crowdfunding platform informing me that they had closed Victoria's account and frozen the funds pending distribution. Justice was finally beginning. 6 months later, I was sitting on the terrace of my penthouse, enjoying my morning coffee while reading the day's news. The front page of the local newspaper had a headline that made me smile. Couple sentenced to prison for fraud against a senior citizen. Daniel had received 2 years in prison. Victoria, as the mastermind of the scheme, had received 3.5 years. In addition, they would have to pay a $50,000 fine and perform community service in nursing homes once they completed their sentences. Justice had been complete and satisfying. But the most rewarding part was not their punishment, but what I had built with my freedom. The Margaret Vance Foundation for the Protection of Seniors had already helped over 200 people in situations similar to mine. We had established a helpline, free legal services, and a financial education program for older adults. My story had inspired changes in state legislation on elder abuse. It was now more difficult for family members to obtain fraudulent benefits, and there were stronger protections for vulnerable seniors. But perhaps most importantly, I had rediscovered myself. At 71, I had learned to dance salsa, take painting classes, and travel to places I had only dreamed of visiting. I had an active social life, true friends, and a renewed purpose. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Lauren, my real estate agent, who had become one of my best friends. "Margaret, did you see the news? I just read about the sentencing." "Perfect. No, not that. Did you see that Victoria tried to sell her story to a television production company?" I laughed. "Seriously? What story?" "The one about how she defrauded her mother-in-law and ended up in prison. Apparently, she wanted to make a series about the dark side of social media and how internet justice destroyed her life." The nerve. And what happened? The production company rejected the proposal after investigating the facts. Turns out they prefer stories with more sympathetic protagonists. That afternoon, I had an important meeting. I had decided to write a book about my experience, and my editor was coming to discuss the final details of the contract. "Margaret," she said as we reviewed the manuscript, "your story is powerful because it's real. There's no fictional revenge or magical justice. It's simply a woman who decided not to be a victim." That was exactly the message I wanted to convey. "Have you thought about making any contact with Daniel now that he's in prison?" "I've thought about it, I admit it, but I've decided I have nothing to say to him until he shows real change. Empty apologies don't rebuild broken trust. And if he wanted to make amends when he gets out, he would have to start by fully acknowledging what he did, without excuses, without blaming Victoria. He would have to show that he understands the harm he caused, and he would have to accept that the relationship would never be the same." That evening, as I prepared dinner in my gourmet kitchen, I reflected on the journey I had taken. The woman who had escaped through the back door that morning had been a frightened victim. The woman cooking now was an empowered survivor. My story had proven something that many people forget. It is never too late to reclaim your life. I had learned that kindness does not mean being a doormat, that family love does not justify abuse, that age is not synonymous with vulnerability, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply to live well. My phone showed a message from a 68-year-old woman in Mexico who had seen my interview. "Mrs. Margaret, your story gave me the courage to confront my family. After 2 years of humiliation, I finally stood up for myself. Thank you for showing me that I deserve respect." Messages like that arrived daily. Each one reminded me why it had been worth making my story public. As I had dinner on my terrace, watching the city lights stretch to the horizon, I silently toasted to all the women who had found their voice after years of silence. Daniel and Victoria had thought they were discarding me like trash. Instead, they had freed me to become the best version of myself. On my desk was a photo of my late husband. I spoke to him as I did every night. "My love, I know you would be proud. I didn't let them turn me into a victim. I defended my dignity and helped others defend theirs." That night, before sleeping, I wrote in my journal, "I don't regret adopting Daniel when he was a child. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction." The next morning, I would have a new interview, another opportunity to tell my story, another chance to help someone who felt invisible in their own life. Because in the end, I had discovered that my true purpose was not to be the perfect mother or the accommodating mother-in-law. My purpose was to simply be Margaret, a whole, independent, and free woman. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever felt truly underestimated? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.